Hello, everyone. This is the committee meeting of the Assessment and Accountability Committee, and I am off camera, but I will be on camera very soon. I'm just in transit. And also off camera is Ruth Wattenberg and our staff member, Darren. So thanks.
And Jacques is on now too.
Oh, he is?
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes,
Hi,
I am
Jacques.
now. Hello, how are we doing this afternoon?
Good. Sorry, I'm driving, so I can't see. Only here. So we are all here. Hooray. And we have two big buckets today. Oh, what about Jessica? Is President Sutter coming?
I believe there was a leadership meeting going on right now. I'm not sure if they're carrying
okay.
it over.
That's too bad, actually. Hoping to hear back about OSCE, but all right, we'll have to follow up with President Sutter about a couple of things. But the two buckets tonight are, one is just updating our work from this year, and then talking about what we think, you know, whoever is going to be part of the new iteration of this committee should know. So I think that was it. I'm not looking at the agenda, but why don't we start with updates, since that's always where we start. Anyway, Darren, why don't you start, just because you have one that's unrelated to our regular agenda, or it's tangentially related.
Sure. Let me just pull up that. I don't have anything in front of me right now.
Okay.
Bear
No,
with
just
me.
about the conference, but actually it's related to the panel. So why don't you wait? All right, I have an update about the well-rounded education work. Last time we met, I had mentioned that I was going to talk with Chelsea Coffin from the Learning Policy Institute, DC Policy Institute, sorry. And because she had reached out to the state board and was interested in the prior work we had done with well-rounded education. So I was curious to know what they are planning. So as it turns out, they're not planning to do much with well-rounded education. And they would be more following us than the other way around. But I'm mentioning it because she did share, I guess they did a series of focus groups to find out what their agenda should be. And she shared with me sort of the more major work streams of work they plan to do. And they most of them align with work that the state board is doing. Again, I don't have it in front of me, but it's a reminder that we should check in with them to see if there's ways that the state board can, you know, I don't know if so much collaborate, but just build on each other's work and share resources. And I'll find the notes from that meeting and share with you what their agenda looks like. But for the well-rounded, they don't even know when they would start doing it, and it will be minor. So I did relay Ruth's recommendation, I think it was Ruth and President Sutter, that they focus on elementary school if they do end up doing it. But another meeting I had on another subject with Mary Filardo, we were talking about well-rounded education in the context of facilities, but she brought up the point that it's at middle school, starting at middle school, especially for small middle schools, that a lot of times schools don't have the funding, or they decide not to provide students with, you know, what are considered specials or extra courses. And so she recommended focusing on middle school. So just putting that out there. Okay, all of that said, Darren mentioned that there isn't really staff capacity to do the well-rounded research. We were, according to our work plan, we're supposed to start it now in November, and it got pushed back to December. You need to wait, okay? Just wait 1 minute. But that is something I want to discuss in the next, as part of the next bucket of like how we want to convey to the next folks, what we've already done and what we think, they might want to think about. And also, I would like to convey to them, or no, something I think we should talk about is how do priorities on the board get set? I understand capacity is capacity, but who decides what gets cut and what doesn't? And I would have assumed it was member vote. And so that's just something I want to put forward, even though go ahead.
Sorry, I think, so when we were working on the work plan, I think that was just pre-John Paul, like sharing that he was moving to another,
I think we lost Emily.
oh no. This is to her message, but I mean, I would venture to say that the work plan was built without having, with a full,
When we lost Jock.
we lost Jock. Oh,
So
no.
probably just hold that thought, Darren, until we're
Okay,
all back, I would say.
right, I'll be,
Oh, somebody's in them. Emily's now in the attendees.
okay, yeah, I think she was just switching over. Let me see if I have a message from,
Sorry, I'm not switching over yet. I'm just now going from the car to my house. So lots of transitions here. You guys hear me though?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Darren. What were you saying?
Emily, we also lost Jock. So I think Darren is kind of
give me,
okay.
get both
give
of
me
y'all back.
1 moment. Sorry. I don't know why I'm so congested today.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's stinky.
No, it's okay. I'm not sick. I'm just,
We hope.
yeah, cross my fingers. What I was saying was the work plan specifically around the like well-rounded education, while it was built back in like January, February of this year, that was pre-John Paul leaving. And so we just have such limited staff that I think you're right. I think it would have been something I definitely could have tackled, but I think given just everything going on right now with like the limited staff and onboarding 2 staff members next week, that's why, like, just looking at everything we have going on, it was something that that I think just made more sense to push it to next year, since it's part of the FY23 budget. Just pushing it until after the board governance recommendations were out and like things kind of settled down a little bit.
I think that makes sense. I think it's a logical argument. All I'm saying is we're setting a precedent of the ED deciding that or staff deciding that, and I don't think that probably should be the precedent. And so what I'm saying is, I'm not saying, Darren, that you should do this work. What I'm saying is, okay, it's been made clear that there is not the capacity to do everything. Therefore, we should have a vote on what work gets sidelined. Would I vote yes on sidelining this? Probably, yeah. But I think it's up to the whole board, and I don't think it should be decided by one person, or, you know what I mean? Unless it's the folks who are working on it.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally, am I on? Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay. So I think that maybe this is something we should bring up with Alex and or leadership. That's why I wish President Sutter over here, it would be helpful, but I can convey that, or maybe Darren, you and I can, I don't know. Yeah, I
It should
can.
be written, it should be written somewhere, like it should be in the minutes of the meeting. And also, I wouldn't necessarily, if it had come to a vote, I would not necessarily have said we shouldn't go forward with it, so. You know, we'd have to, we'd want to see what the alternatives were.
Right, right. So it's like a discussion that clearly needs to be had.
I'm making a note, or I'm putting this in the notes. Also, I would recommend this would best come up with Bernice when she starts.
Right. Yeah. No, I completely understand that we're in this, you know, moment of tumult in terms of transitions. It's just a matter of like, who decides what the priorities are for the work streams? And this is, we voted on this, like, this is part of the work stream, right? So, anyway, so, any thoughts about any of that beyond what we've already discussed? Like, any thoughts about, I don't know. Yeah.
I think
Any other thoughts about putting the work off and what we should do, what we should convey to the next folks
One
about
note.
it, either way?
One note that I could put in there on top of like a vote or whatever these conversations look like between the ED and members in the work plans. There's also like a lead for each task in each project. And so that's like another area where, say, like I'm split between two committees. There's a project going on with that committee and a project going on with this committee, like committee A and B. And the projects are going on at the same time, then planning ahead, we could say, okay, Darren goes to leads project A and chairs lead project or committee B, the chairs lead that work, but knowing well ahead of time. So say there are like 5 projects, I would be split leading some of that work, but not all of that work. But using the work plan to know in advance whether staff is leading that work or if chairs are leading that work, if that makes sense.
Staff or who?
Or
Or-
chairs.
I can't hear what you're saying, sorry.
Staff or
Um,
chairs?
Oh, or chairs, okay.
Yeah, but again, I think that's a different issue, right? I think changing who's working on it, it's sort of, I guess, unless we decide there's not capacity for the chairs to do it. I don't know.
I think
Okay.
this is more detailed than we need to be getting into. I mean, there are obviously just, you know, discussions to be had about allocations of staff or committee time, whatever, based on a new staffing situation. The point is, there needs to be a decision by the membership if you're going to change the priorities. I think that's the only point. And also I see Carlene's hand is up. We've probably all been talking over her. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I just put it up in between statements. Yeah, I think Ruth, you were hitting on it. We lost Emily again. But about some of it sounds like a process piece that needs to be hammered out. But I think in regards to specific committee work, it's probably best use of time at the moment to just figure out like what does this group recommend the board pick up starting in January, and then put any nice little bows on any outstanding work that, if there is any outstanding work, just kind of basically start wrapping up, and then provide recommendations for what should be taken up next year. And you also can provide recommendations for process, because I imagine that this situation isn't just an issue within the Assessment and Accountability Committee about allocation of resources. That's it.
Yeah, no, that's my point, Carlene, exactly. It's not so much about this particular work, though I think Ruth is saying, you know, she might feel differently about it. And it is specifically about this work. It's both, right? It's about this work and it's about sort of the setting the precedent. So, Darren, can you put the agenda in the chat again? Sorry, so I can see it too.
Sure.
All right. Thank you. So the other update is, why can't I see my notes? Is the, alternative assessment work. And we had gone from maybe having a panel at one of our meetings to, okay, you guys can do a webinar. And then from that to like, again, it's like, there's not capacity for staff to do it. So I guess my question is, I think we could do a webinar. I don't think it's a heavy lift for the committee to do it. Like I can reach out to folks. I'm just wondering if that's something, if you guys have thoughts on whether that's something that should be a priority before we, Ruth and I are no longer on the board.
I mean, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, insofar as you're doing it all, Emily, I'm
Mhm.
all for you doing it because I think it would be very interesting and how can it, and that it's useful for whoever, you know, for the next board, they can take it or leave it. So, you know, it would be contributing one more set of info for what I think will potentially could be a big issue, which is the assessment, but that's.
I guess my question is, I mean, so we don't really know what OSSI is planning to do around this. There does seem to be something in the works. It would be helpful to know. So my question, I guess, for our leadership and future leadership on the board is, you know, is there a way to at least at some point get looped into that so it can inform, you know, what work, the kind of work we're doing. In the meantime, I think it can't hurt to have these recommendations out there, because even if OSSI chooses a different assessment like next year, this could still be something for down the road. So my next question, again, I wish President Sutter were here. Last time we brainstormed some names for possible panelists. So Ruth, I know you recommended Natalie Wexler and I think probably Barbara Davidson, right?
Yeah, not Natalie so much to talk about the assessment, but possibly Barbara Davidson or, you know, it's about how Louisiana tried to do their assessment, which was it allowed, I mean, part of what's wrong with the math and reading test is it really causes schools to it's a disincentive to focus on science, social studies, and the arts. And so what they tried to do was come up with assessments that wouldn't do that, would make it explicit that your ability to comprehend the reading was in part based on the subject matter that you knew. And so it was based on subject matter that students had been taught, instead of pretending that, you know, you can just teach kids these comprehension skills and then suddenly they're going to understand, you know, bacteria and these other things. So
Good. Okay.
so
That was-
I would suggest, I think Barbara Davidson might be, and the other people that worked on it were the people at Hopkins.
Ashley Berner and Dan.
Yeah, and David Steiner. So I mean, among them, they all know, you know, they would know who the right person is. Maybe it's one of them, maybe it's somebody from Louisiana. I mean, meanwhile, I think the Louisiana plan has actually blown up. and I don't know enough about it, but I think the idea of trying to figure that out is really important. So.
What do you mean it's blown up? It's doing really well, or it's blown up?
No, I think that it, you know,
Okay.
the opposite. I don't know enough about it to know exactly what happened or why.
And what was Barbara's role in the?
I mean, Standards Work is very supportive of that idea. I mean, they're just part of sort of the network of people.
So it's
along
more to
the-
ask them.
Yeah, exactly.
I got you.
They would just know what's going on there. And
Okay.
Ashley Berner might be the best, but
All right.
either of them, Ashley or Barbara probably.
Good. I think that was it. Those were all the names. I wasn't clear what they were about. I really want to get somebody from either Alaska and or Georgia, because they're doing the through year pilots. And then I think we should get somebody from Linda Darling Hammond's, you know, cadre, right? That's her thing. And then I know somebody in New York who was like worked under Joel Klein and did alternative assessments along with, like, I think he should speak to how that doesn't work. He's written about it a lot. When you have like a performance assessment or a school quality review type thing alongside a high stakes, you know, standardized test, it doesn't really work well, but he could speak to, like, you know, the things that were good and the challenges. So, okay. So I think I will try to pursue that. And if I get, you know, positive responses, I think it's a pretty light lift and I can do that. Does anybody want to help with that?
I'm saying it sounds like you all have the best recommendations. I can't off the top of my head think of anyone who is in that work. The only recommendation I could have with previous experience of planning a different panel, which will be similar, I guess, in form, is just using your regular meeting date or using the regular meeting date and time.
That's a good idea.
The panel, because scheduling was a nightmare.
Yeah, no, well, I guess it will depend on if panelists can make it at that time, but I think this is probably a better time actually for folks, I'm gonna guess, than our morning one, but I could offer both because this seems to work, right? Okay, because it would be good to at least have the committee present, if not, you know, more board members. I'm hoping more board members can join as well, but okay. So we will go ahead with that. That's good. Are there any other thoughts about the alternative assessments, what we should be doing, what we would recommend be done? Or
Yeah, I mean, outside of hosting the panel, I think at this rate, because now you're talking about December, you would just be archiving the notes from that meeting or panel and recommendations, and then handing them over for the next iteration of the board to pick up.
right.
Only thing about having, like, you know, with having a panel at this rate, you get one thing checked off, but then the information is handed over to.
Right. And I think just the only other thing, Darren, would be what I mentioned, which is finding out from OSSI at the soonest possible date what they're up to, what they're thinking, even, you know, if they're not sure.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't hurt to get the information down, because, you know, or I think wasn't there in it's a commitment to get rid of Park, right? That was in the resolution. So I mean, it doesn't hurt to start collecting this information,
Right.
because I imagine they're going to follow through on that commitment.
Right.
And also, I mean, if the board wants to play a role in, you know, have a role in thinking about the new assessment, it's not going to play that role because we say, please invite us to play that role. We'll play that role because we have something worth saying. And that's going to require people to know, you know, have some things worth saying. So I think it's just important to start the conversation. Then people decide whether there's enough to go forward with, you know, that is worth really trying to push for board involvement in it. You know.
Darren, I see your note in the chat. Was that the date you and I landed on?
we discussed December 18th, but I'm just mishearing having a potential webinar on our meeting day.
Which would be the 9th, you're saying.
Yeah,
I would
So-
suggest doing it later for my sake. I just think it's gonna be a fast turnaround. I think giving people more of a runway. So what date was, or what day of the week is the 18th?
the 18th is sorry, bear with me. Monday, but I'm sorry.
All right, well, we
can't be
can
right.
figure this out. We don't have to figure this out on them. But we'll get back to you about a date.
Okay,
I'll
but a quick follow-up question to that is, would you want then the last of this year's accountability and assessment meetings to fall after the webinar or before the webinar?
Good question. It would be nice to be able to debrief, yeah. So maybe we should. I don't know. Do we need to debrief? What I think is we'll have the webinar, we'll take notes, we will share the notes and you know, because we're passing the baton, really, that's what we're sharing. I don't know if we need to have another meeting, Darren. I think this is it. I think this is our last meeting as a, you know, regular committee. And then the next one will be the webinar. That's what I propose. Is that
I
right?
totally agree with that. I also think, you know, the first 10 minutes or the last 10 minutes of the webinar can be to just finish up some business if there is some, but I agree. I mean, what we're passing on is the content of the thing. And if there's something in particular we want to pass on, we can, you know, write a 2-paragraph resolution saying what's important, or we can, you know, or include it in our minutes, even better, you know.
Right. Okay, so Darren and I will touch base and send out a couple of options. But as of now, Darren, what makes sense to me is like maybe the 3rd Friday, or no, 2nd Friday in December. We don't want to get too close to Christmas. And we also have to look at when Hanukkah is this year. I don't know. Do you know, Ruth?
No, but I can find out.
All right. So anyway, we've got a lot of holidays to navigate. And I don't think we should spend time on it right now. Okay, good. So the only other thing I think to discuss is the last time we did talk about, you know, whether or not we should do more engagement around the like gathering community input on the report card and the display and content, right, of what goes on to the report card, because OSSI is going to engage again. Like they're going to, this is actually the part that we've been waiting for, and we're not going to be part of it. That's kind of how I feel about it, is like how this the you know annual meaningful, whatever it's called, meaningful annual differentiation score is displayed is what's most important to many of us. So I kind of feel like I agree it probably isn't that useful for us to do more like gathering of information from the public, but what I do think would probably be useful is for this committee to come up with a way to convey our recommendations to our school communities and to stakeholders, and to give them a heads up that OSSI is going to be engaging them again around, you know, and really specifically about what, because I think it's confusing to people. I mean, that was my main takeaway actually from the engagement, was that for some people, they didn't even know that there was a school report card, but whatever. I mean, that's one group. But
Aaron,
even
Jock is in attendees, sorry.
what's that?
Jock is in the attendee side. We
Oh,
lost.
Darren, are you there?
Yes.
Also, so I'm sorry, does this agenda item go with the future of the A&A community? Okay,
It's both. because I guess what I'm saying is, yes, and, hi, Jacques, sorry, I'm just talking about, whether or not we want to do any more work related to the report card engagement that OSSI is going to do.
And I apologize. I keep dropping because I'm in transit. I'm in traffic. I'm trying to navigate getting to southeast. But I do think we should do more because we are in the phase of where we're actually designing. I know we do have a lot of great information, but we need to be engaged in what that looks like throughout. And OSSI and those guys need to be partnering with us to make sure that what we have recommended as far as what the report card actually looks like and its usability needs to be coordinated with what we kind of recommended to them. So
Exactly.
there is more work to be done around that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I kind of was getting at. So I'd started talking about that at our last meeting, we said we don't need to do more, but I do think, I agree with you, Jacques. And what I was saying is, I think for the rest of our term, Ruth, and for the next members who join this committee, it is important, first of all, for stakeholders to know what our recommendations are. And I don't think that that's going to be part of OSSI's presentation, you know, when they.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly there, because
Yeah.
we delivered that. We said that there were not going to be any stars, but what does this really look like? A lot of people put a lot of work into, you know, suggesting what the design should be like. And we need to make sure that they follow through on that. That's the biggest thing, is that this is the part that really matters to the people that we got information from. They weren't into the metrics as much as, you know, changing parts from growth and whatever the case may be, but they are into the design and its usability. And so we need to make sure and hold OSSI accountable for what it looks
I mean, can I just say, I mean, we adopted unanimously a resolution on all that. I mean, there was one amendment that wasn't unanimous, that wasn't about the report card. And other than that, there was a unanimous resolution, and it was pretty detailed. And it followed on a previous research report on all this stuff. And I think that's what we're able to pass on, quote unquote. And, you know, there's interest, I can hear it in Jacques' voice, and I think in Carlene's and others, to make sure that OSSI engages that. And that's I don't know what else we can do. I think it's the next board is gonna have to really try to use what we have and their new energy and voices to push OSSI.
But I guess, yes, and I think we can be
And I agree.
proactive, you know, sorry, I'll be quick. But I just think we should be proactive about, what I'm thinking is sharing with our respective school communities some sort of debrief, something that's like 5 bullet points, maybe the most important things, right? And I can draft something and share it with you all offline. But like, just here's what is going to happen, right? OSSI is going to at some point engage you around the display and content of the report card. Here are some things to keep in mind, X, Y, and Z. Here are the recommendations from the board, and we would just pull out like the most pertinent and easily accessible ones, you know. So that's my proposal. What are your thoughts?
I think you're spot on. Me personally, about just, again, holding their feet to the fire. And Ruth, I hear you as far as, you know, we laid it out pretty plain for them, but the devil is always in the details, and specifically in implementation of anything that we've done as far as recommendation, you know. And I think you know that from your tenure, that we can recommend a lot of things, but a lot of times they don't listen to us. And we have to kind of hold their feet to the fire and stay out in front as far as telling the community and people that we heard you, this is what we heard from you. And we're going to continue to try to deliver on the recommendations that came from you.
I mean, all that is fine with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that just, again, saying it makes sense. Because I don't think we ever, with all this survey data, I know we made our recommendations, but I don't know if we ever had a chance to, we told OSSI, but I don't know if we like took those recommendations to the community or not. I can't remember. But I also remember some of the what Ruth was saying. the feedback that we constantly got from Aussie and others was, oh, this is stuff that's related to the dashboard. It's not really related to the ESSA recommendation. So now all that information is, pertinent to what we're doing. But I can't remember, I'm not sure if it slipped my mind or if we just didn't do it. If the recommendations that we came up with from engagement, if those were ever shared back to the public outside of the resolution.
Good question. I know, so I drafted an email that I shared with the whole board that was sort of a, this is where we are now. But I got feedback and I sent it to, my networks. I got feedback that it was just too much. And that's the real challenge here, right? Is like, it is a lot. And what do you take out? So we really have to pare it down, I think, when you're doing it that way, like sending out an email to like 5 points. And yeah.
I was going to say to your question, Carlene, is that we kind of did that when we had the engagement sessions that we had at Eastern a little bit, but we really didn't go back to the groups that kind of participated and specifically said, this is where we are in the process, and that we need to be vigilant to make sure that we carry through on the recommendations. We kind of explained to them exactly, the process and how it happens and everything, but we didn't go back to them outside of the recommendations to specifically tell them, this is what we're going to be doing going forward.
Could we do that? Like, we have emails for people who attended the 2 engagement sessions, right, Darren?
And I would say you might be able to go even back further. When you say 2 engagement sessions, I'm not sure if you're talking about, are you talking about the ones that were last fall, not the ones this year?
Yeah.
But at the Ward 7 or that was Ward 7, they're both Ward 7. The what was it? The rec.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, because then that way, like, we're building on knowledge. You don't have to go all the way back to square one with some of the explanations. They have been prepped with, some of the information. So yeah, I like that idea.
I think it's a yes and though. Like, I definitely want, this is also gets at what I heard from my constituents. Like, some of them were just confused when Aussie was reaching out to them about the same stuff that I had reached out to them about. And they're like, is this the same thing? Is this a different thing? They didn't know we were working together.
Yeah.
And so I want to get ahead of that again, and sort of say what to expect and what to know, from the state board's recommendations. So that's all. And so I'm going to work hard. I have some good examples now of like infographics that my students worked on, and I'm like inspired. I'm like, if they can do it, I can do it. It's like taking a lot of information and putting it into something that people can really digest, so yeah, so that's all I think on that front. And I think it's something that the new folks, I don't know when Aussie is planning to engage, but I assume it's going to go beyond January, given where we are right now. And so this is something that they can kind of take on when they know more, I guess. But yeah, I mean, Jacques and Carlene, I don't know if you're going to be on this committee anymore. So you may have to just debrief people and before you move on or something.
I plan to. I'm just saying.
Okay, good. All right. I think that was it. That's the agenda that I had planned. I don't know if folks have anything else they wanted to bring up, or I know, yeah, I don't know. Anything else we should be considering, thinking about? Darren, I guess I would just ask on the point about, how do we set priorities? Who, like, maybe this isn't you, I ask, for the committee, like, who should tell who? Is it me telling or Jacques telling?
Should be in our minutes. It should be in our minutes.
So then what? Then what happens? Do we
Then
bring
you
this up at a working session or?
Yeah, well, you report it out at the working session when there's the committee reports. And I also imagine, you know, I think there might be some discussion, I hope, about sort of rules going forward at the December session.
And maybe an admin
Something
actually,
like that.
Jacques, right? That's
Mhm.
actually, so maybe I'll ask to put this on the agenda for admin.
Yeah, I think this goes to the wider conversation of all committees, so
Yeah,
that sounds about right.
okay.
I also want to share in the chat, what you touched on earlier, that conference session that I went to. So I'll try to share out, I'm in touch with folks at this. It was like an advancing policy research and cross-disciplinary perspectives conference or forum, so. Although this is just completely sidetracking this conversation, but I didn't want to forget to share this with everyone.
That's
So-
okay. We're done, I think. So you can, I mean, this is related possibly to the panel, right, on alternative assessment. I think,
No, this was more
oh,
accountability pressure, performance information use and social equity. It was just like going back to like ratings and like just school accountability aspects, and a few, like 3 papers were presented on this. In terms of the webinar on assessments, I'll touch base with you offline, and I definitely owe you those notes on some of the panelists that we discussed, and then I'm taking notes from this meeting as well.
okay, cool. Thank you, Darren.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Enjoy your weekends. Enjoy your holidays.
Well, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah, happy
Bye, everyone. Happy